You have just tuned in to the Table of Redemption, our series building bridges of hope and redemption in crises. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my next episode of the Table of Redemption. I have a wonderful guest with me today, Snehal. She's from India. Not only that, she is a colleague of mine, and she is also a recent graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Education, class of 2025, with me. She is one of my members of a close-knit group of people that followed my work, reviewed my work, peeked in the door, was at the launch event of the work, along with a few other people on the podcast this season. You hear me talk about Alicia Thompson, and I use the word MLC, microlearning community. Well, she was in the microlearning community. So we have Snehal and we have Alicia from that community. You hear me talk about Cecilia, and you also hear me talk about Krista. They were in another class with me who helped me, who were close looking at my work and helping me give feedback and questioning me as I built this journey here. So why in the world would I do this podcast without them? I don't know. So that's why we're here, because I was not going to get out of this season one, without having the closest, best people in my Harvard journey here with me telling this story. For those who are new listeners, the Table of Redemption is the conversation starter to the leadership redemption framework that I built during my time at Harvard. Now, I built the framework about 20 years ago when I was starting work in rural and impoverished communities where there were limited resources. I work with people farthest from the opportunity, but I did not have the acquiesce, or I did not have the skill or courage to know how to get into the groove and bring success out of what I thought was a disaster, doom and gloom. And each of these systems that I worked in were filled with crises that no one really could see coming, or no one knew how to explain. So I started jotting down little things. What would a leader need to know if they left an institution or if they left a job in the middle of a crisis? And how do they redeem themselves? So the podcast is to bring hope, life, love, uplift to you where you may be in some kind of conundrum, or you may be trying to maybe start a new business, or like me and Snehal, we just graduated Harvard. So we're trying to figure out this transition. So as we hear today, Snehal will give us her background. We'll celebrate her work, but also she will give us some wisdoms and some valuable steps probably of what we can do as we journey on to be redeeming ourselves and rebuilding ourselves with a level of joy that this world needs right now because it is so dark. So to you, Snehal, tell me today, what brings you to the table of redemption?
Thank you so much, Rasheen, for the wonderful introduction, firstly. And secondly, it's you. You bring me here to this amazing podcast series, and I wish you all the very best. But to begin with, to go a little bit deeper into that question, I come to the table of redemption as a first generation learner. I am the first in my family to complete high school, complete undergraduate studies, and now also do my graduation alongside you. I also come to the table of redemption as a global educator and a systems thinker who has personally firsthand walked through the margins and decided to come back with more questions. I was born into a world where brilliance was often overlooked, especially for learners who spoke English as a second language, who had privilege disguised, and who did not necessarily fit into neat standardized boxes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And yet I decided to stay curious, to question the norms. I think personally, through that journey, I realized that mediocrity was very well hidden by parents who could afford tutors, who could afford mentors. And so, from classrooms back home in India that had a tin shed to research labs here in Boston now, from post disaster recovery zones in Puerto Rico to the curriculum circles in Mexico. I have
Mm.
worked across borders with children of different age groups, not just of geography, but identity, language, and belonging, where English was also um, a second language for them, where they also face similar challenges. And that's when I realized the true definition of the global South, that global belt that we say, the global South. I think that is when that reality of that identity of what a global South actually means
Mm,
dawned upon me. And I was shocked and proud at the same time that I belong. That is a part of my identity.
yeah.
What brings me here is also belief in education, that it should not be just a sieve, but more of like a mirror. Education should not be a space where, students get filtered and you get an admission, but rather than a mirror for them to reflect with their past alumni and the future and upcoming generations. And I think that is what keeps me going, that motivation of like changing the rules of who gets to learn
Mm.
what, the content, who gets to lead in a classroom space. Because if you look back now, we used to talk about 21st century skills, for example. But if you look at the classroom designs, the classrooms are still designed in the same way. There's a teacher standing, and then there are a group of students sitting in front of the teacher. That has not changed over the years, for example.
Mhm.
And that is the kind of curiosity that leads me. So that is also something that brings me to your table of redemption, to just understand that these things are already happening. I think change is happening. There's a shift happening very quietly, powerfully, but it's happening at the edges. It's not yet recognized. So I'm here to amplify that work with care, with courage, and with as much clarity as I can bring to the table. So, yeah.
Oh, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Few the words, buzzwords that you use amplify. Another one is edge. Another one is just really talking about the word redemption and what it really, really means here. Because what I'm understanding as I'm building this framework, I'm after a new lexicon of a leader who's not afraid to do that in the middle of crisis. See, when we're in the middle of a time of crisis, people are getting fired. There's war going on. There are people that are there's a lot of scarcity around. So there's the propensity to dial back, to hide, shrink down, and whatever. But the framework is really built for you,
Yeah.
systems level thinkers and leaders, trailblazers, pioneers, just like you, who have just the right amount of courage, just the right amount of vision, just the right amount of hope as well. Not to maybe tear a door down, right? And not to bulldoze, but with the right amount of love, you can do the same thing. With the right amount of curiosity and consistency, you can do the same thing. And I love the way, just watching your work over the time we were here at Harvard, um, it really spoke to that. So can you now speak to the work that you've done in India, for one, as the founder of your organization, and then get into some of the things, the initiatives and organizations that you led while you were at Harvard, to back up and frame what it is you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wow. It's been a long journey. I've been an educator for more than 10 years now. So I'll try to pack it in as concise manner as I can.
Mhm.
My journey as an educator, I think, started back in British Council. I graduated with a degree in political science and a major in international relations. And at
Okay.
that point, I was excited. I'm like, yes, international relations. I'm going to work at the consulate. This is the best job I can get. I was working at the British consulate for 2 years. It was customer services. So how it works in the embassy, to give you context, is that they put you through different departments, and they see where you're a good fit. And then the second year is when you continue full time in that particular role.
Mhm.
And I was like, I want to work for the education services because that was the most sought after. It's the consulate. So they work in collaboration with Oxford and Cambridge. So clearly
Okay.
you can see where my priorities were.
Mhm.
But they said, no, customer services is where you begin. Like all organizations, you need to start to understand what your customer really needs. And I faced calls, and they were not nice ones, mind you. That sort of was, I feel, a very, very humbling experience for me, taking 80 to 90 calls every day of customers who are frustrated, who are not happy. And I have come from a family, even though we were not, did not have a lot, but I was never, no one ever scolded me that much, you know. I was the eldest daughter in the family, so I was the strong one. But here I had people, and not just people I know, random strangers, like telling me that this is not working, fix this, do that.
Mhm.
Um, I think that humbled me a lot. And it was in the last cycle when they put me in the education department, and I saw all these students come in. And I think something was missing in the dialogue that I had with them. They did not, there was a gap between what was happening in the ground reality versus what they were going to go ahead and learn
Mm.
for their graduate or whatever PhD programs. I think that was a very big eye-opening moment for me, that when I decided that I want to continue and do something in the field of education. I come from a family of teachers.
Oh,
My parents could not get a formal degree, and they started teaching at home as home tutors to earn an income. So that's the kind of teaching I was exposed to. So I was like, no, I want to get a formal official degree. I want to be educated. Um, because that was one label that ran in my family, uneducated, the
oh,
whole time, right? Because
okay.
we did not have a formal degree. I was the first one. I was still just freshly graduated from an undergrad program. My manager was amazing, and she said, Snehal, you know what, there's a program called Teach for India, I think you should check it out and just apply. And we were two subord juniors at that time, and we both decided, like, yeah, let's just give this a shot. You know what, we'll see what happens. And I was not at all interested, because I was like, I'm going to make this British Council job make out, like, somehow I'll make it work. And my other friend, she was the one who was the most interested in this one.
Okay.
um, she prepared, she prepped, and I was all chill. So we go for the interview, and so how they do the Teach for India interviews is that the students who they select for the final round, they ask them to stay back in that main conference room, and they ask some students to leave the room. So we don't know what's happening. Why are some students leaving? And once they leave the room, they tell you that you've been selected for the program. Coincidentally, I was asked to stay in the room, and my friend who was super excited was asked to leave the room. And I could not face her for the longest time, because I was not even interested in this program, But like, I think I believe in that there's a story, that's written for you before you come to this planet.
Hmm.
And I think this was a story that was predestined for me. And I joined Teach for India as a fellow. I moved cities. My family was not happy. A woman had never left their home before. I lived in a multi-generational family with my grandmom, my grandparents, my uh, aunts and uncles, and we were, I think, 14 family members in a two-room house.
Hmm.
And this was the first time I was going to step outside, and I put my foot down. My mom was there to support me. So I've seen female figures have my back.
I know that's right.
And yeah, so that is also a part of my identity now. And I moved to another city.
Okay.
I think that's how my Teach for India fellowship started. My first aha moment in life was, as a part of this fellowship, you are expected to do home visits as teachers for your students, because Teach for India, like the Teach for America program, it's under the AmeriCorps program.
Hmm.
Have designed it in such a manner that they expect you to understand the challenges your students face, because they come from marginalized communities. They are under-resourced, underprivileged. So I'm all set with my bag and my notebook. I'm going to take notes and see what challenges my kids face. The first house I step into, it is fancy for my standard. And I'm like, if they call this marginalized, what am I? Like,
Ooh.
I don't, so that was a big reality check for me.
Okay.
Because, growing up, your parents don't want you to know the reality, like the
Yes.
finances, and they don't tell you these things because you're a child. So you're like, oh no, I have everything I need. But when you step out, that was my first time. I was 26 years old. And that was the first time reality hit that I might be first gen low income, like that true definition of who I am. I'm like, wow, my kids are well off. Like, I don't know how to support them. But at the same side, it turned out really well, because I knew their ground reality. I knew the challenges that, okay, at 7 p.m., my student can't finish their homework beyond that time because there's no electricity. They can't go back home to fill their water bottle because there's no water supply on 3 days of the week, because the water comes from the municipal corporation. So these are some challenges that I was very comfortable with, because that was my lived reality too.
Hmm.
And that is how I was able to sort of break into their family, spaces, and interact with them and have that conversation with them. And I realized that my kids, after 6 months of being in the classroom, only studied English, math, and science. Like,
Ooh.
these were the only subjects they have studied, and they were in the seventh grade. And I was this, this teacher. I'm like, oh no, my kids are going to do art, they're going to do dance. And I come from a city where culture is like heavily embedded in your curriculum. So I was like, oh no, liberal arts, and I'm an advocate. Da, da, da. And my parents said no. My child is going to do either math or science because I want them to have a job after they finish high school. And the girls can go do English because they get married as soon as they turn 15. And that was a shock moment for me. And I said, wow, how do I make this change? So what I did was I tried introducing a new textbook in the classroom. It's called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. It's a beautiful story at the backdrop of the Second World War. And
Mhm.
I took photocopies and I told the school principal that, hey, I'm going to finish all the chapters that you've mandated from this textbook, but I also want some space where I'm teaching them English. Give me 6 months, and if their reading comprehension scores don't increase, then we'll stop this program. But just let me give this a try. And I photocopied all the chapters for each and every student. I had 150 students in one small classroom.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And I saw the naughty kids pay attention because I told them that we will be watching this movie after the book ends. So you need to pay attention to everything that we study here. And we read the book, they were interested. And when we watched the movie, Rasheen, I must tell you, this is my favorite moment as a teacher.
Please, please.
The kids said that, hey, that one dialogue that we read in the classroom, it was a funny dialogue. And they were like, oh, it'll be so much fun to watch it on the movie. Like, how did they copy this particular incident in the book and translate it into the movie? And that wasn't there in the movie. And the kids were furious. They're like, what? No way. The book was so much better than the movies. And
Oh,
I was like, what did my kids just say? The book was better than the movies? And I think this was a very big win for me when the kids said that they liked reading more than watching the screen. And I recorded that. I kept a record of all the learnings that I gathered from the kids. There were kids who had reading disabilities that came out of that course because I asked them to illustrate answers for me if they were not able to write them in words. And they came up with beautiful illustrations of what their version of a concentration camp was, or what their version of how would a child feel, for example, Anne Frank feel if their friend went away and did not never showed up the next day. I think that was also an introduction for them in the world of global politics and world history. And I asked the kids, what do you think the story is? What genre is this? Fiction, nonfiction, autobiography? And they said, oh, something like a Second World War cannot be real. It must be fiction. And
ooh.
I was like, wow, my kids don't know that this was a reality, that this very much happened. And I had to tell them that this was real, this happened, and this was a very big moment, learning moment for them as well. And till this date, they remember me for that. So that was a highlight about my Teach for India journey. I decided to stay back, that 2 years was not enough. I opened a free of cost community center, especially keeping the girls in mind because I wanted them to study, continue their education, because I'd invested in their families by this time and the parents trusted me with their students. Um, so they were like, okay, fine, you want them to appear for a test. We will see if they get a full scholarship. Only then we let them go and pursue their studies because we do not have money to invest in them. So it was either they get full scholarship or they don't study. So I had 10 girls in my class out of the 150 students, and I we appeared for an entrance exam, and Rasheen, all 10 of them had a full scholarship, boarding included, to study in an IB curriculum in India, and till the 12th grade, and they each get a mentor, to ensure that they finish their just not just high school but their undergrads as well. Out of which two students got a full scholarship to study at the United World Colleges, one in Pearson and one in Mahindra. And they are in college right now. And they are the ones who are leading that community center space. It's been more than 9 years, I think. And yeah, the kids that I taught back then are now leading that space for the incoming cohort. So it's like a full circle moment for me. Some of the teachers I met through the Teach for All network got really inspired and they wanted to implement that same curriculum. So there were teachers from Japan and Mexico, especially, who were extremely interested because they also had English as a second language. And I was like, wait, Japan? Like, how can they have this issue? It's such a developed nation. But they had this challenge where phonetics was an issue for the kids,
Mm. Okay.
because Japanese was their first language. And they're like, no, the kids don't speak English at all. So we would love to implement this curriculum of storytelling and learning English. I'm like, yes, absolutely. So they also created their own after school community center spaces in Mexico and in Japan, and they're running them with their students right now as we speak. So that also was a beautiful expansion. And all this happened with me sitting in India in
Ooh.
my home. And I was like, if this can reach so many places and so many students, I would like to learn, how are schools implementing this outside my country? And it's a developing country where I come from. So I was like, I want to step out, see what developed nations look like. So that's when I started applying. And then I found you and I came to Harvard. And surprisingly, I realized that that issue of kids not being job ready exists here in the US as well. That is what my courses inform me. That is what the readings informed me over here. The research work informed me that in spite of everything, everywhere in the world, the kids are not job ready. They study what everyone studies, and has reached to a point right now where they are losing touch with their own selves. There
Yeah.
is lack of creativity, there is lack of self-worth,
Mm.
and they don't want to have an in-depth knowledge about things. It's very shallow, it's very surface level at this point.
Mhm.
So that is something that really worries me. And I that is something that I'd like to explore more and try to understand and figure out that what can we do for kids so
Mhm.
that they get back, into how we grew up, where we would, for example, if we listen, we talk about a book, a movie, or a band. I remember when I was in high school and my friend was a Star Wars fan. And I'm like, oh, what is Star Wars? I'm not a fan of Star Wars. It doesn't, excite me. But in spite of that, I would go to Google and search what Star Wars was, trying to understand the story and the rationale behind it. But right now, if you tell the kids about something and they're not interested at all, they don't even know how to write emails. And I'm surprised that they don't know how to draft an email to their professor and they're in high school now.
Mm.
They talk to ChatGPT like friend. They're kids. They should not be talking to an AI. They should be talking to human beings. So yeah, things like this really scare me. But at the same time, I have also seen kindness. I think the upcoming generation is more outspoken than what we were back then, which I really love. They're extremely brave. They do not shy away from expressing their opinion, which is fantastic to see.
Mhm.
So yeah, these are some challenges and some highlights of my career. Yeah,
Yeah.
that.
This is beautiful. I've learned so much in just these few minutes. And I know my guests are enjoying this as my listeners and viewers are enjoying this because what you're doing for me is the same thing Pavani did for me yesterday, validating why our hearts beat the same without knowing. Because being in class together, I want to do the podcast post Harvard so I can breathe, everybody else can breathe, and we have finished it. We conquered, we won our challenges, and now it's a reflective space. It was intentional to capture the journeys of the people that I love and the people that love me who were with me at Harvard. But doing it post Harvard without the academia on our shoulders and the pressures on our shoulders, I feel like we're able to bring a part of ourselves that might not have been able to come out because we had all our obligations financially, our living arrangements. You come from oceans and oceans away. I'm 20 hours away, from
Yeah.
everything. And to hear you today, it is so awe-inspiring. I mean, like as my friend, I am so inspired by your journey. And what Pavani did for me yesterday, as she painted the picture of rural India, in a way that I had never imagined, to where she was beginning to talk about what I considered Dalits, and but hers is the untouchables. And so the journey of redemption began at the beginning of her, she and I conversation, and it is beginning at the start of ours, because one of the things that the redemptive leadership side comes in is that we had nothing handed to us. Redemption was from the womb. As soon as we came out of our mother's womb and we came into this earth, we had to start figuring out things very, very early. And so you're painting in a picture that you're the oldest of all your siblings. You were the first to graduate high school, college and your family have an Ivy League graduate in their family, you're talking about destiny and purpose, right? When you were able to go into teach for India and work in the what we call grassroots work here.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what you call it there, but it's
Yes.
grassroots work. Grassroots work, by my definition, is literally grass roots. You go outside, you look at the grass, and the grass is not high, it's low to the ground, and you got a root, and those roots are sometimes shallow. You can pick a weed really quick. So that means that you'll be there replanting and planting because it's grassroots. You have to be committed to understanding what grassroots work look like. You may not get it right the first time or the second time or the third time, but the constellation that is born in you to keep trying and keep going and being consistent, persistent, and also resistant, but you are doing grassroots work. It's uprooted really quick, but you one that will go back and plant it again. Let's start it again. Let's go again until something sprouts. And as I'm looking at my friend and listening to her today, it's like I see myself, my India version of me, here in America, coming from a black family, in the US. My mom and dad had 8 children. We lived in a small home, a 3 bedroom small home. I don't even know if it was 1,000 square feet. It might have been a little more than that, but it wasn't that much. And from there, I watched my mom, the late Mildred George Jameson, my dad, the late Reverend James Jameson. I come from what they call a PK, a pastor's kid, out of the black church. And it was from those lens that I drew inferences that this may be all that we have. But thank God that there's a parent, there's an example, there's something that you glean from. So when you're talking about what you needed to do, what you literally needed to do in order to be who you are today, it was a mandate that somebody somewhere has to break the cycle, right?
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes get the misconception of what that really means about breaking a cycle. You think about breaking something in half, or you think about establishing a revolt or rebellion. Sometimes it's just saying, no, not me. Nuh-uh. Not when it comes to me. That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen when it comes to me. And what is so awe-inspiring about you is that your level of persistence, it may not be as loud as anybody else's, but it is yet loud nonetheless for the work that you need to do. And so the beauty of this dialogue out the gate is that we don't have to talk too much about redemption yet because we are redemption.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
because we
Absolutely.
because we are, and that is the synergy that I'm getting from all the guests that are here on the podcast. Now, can you take me back to your before I go forward into first gen work with what you did at Harvard and going back to all the other organizations and the panels and different things you participated in? Take me back to um, mom, dad, what educators looked like. So if you're the first to go to school or formally educated, how, if you come from a line of educators and teachers in your family, how is that possible in your country if you are not following a traditional system? Like in the US, to say that you are a teacher, a family of teachers, that means there's a credential, there's a certification, there's all these different things. But for your family, how does that look?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a very unique situation that I come from is my mother is from the northeast side of India.
Okay.
So to give you a quick background, every state in India has its own dialect, which means there are definitely more than 10 languages
Okay.
in the
Okay.
country. Every state has its own language. So my
Okay.
mom comes from the northeast, which means she speaks a different language. My dad comes from the west side of India, and he speaks a different language. And when they got married in an arranged marriage setup, which is very common in India back then, they decided to stay in the eastern side, not the northeast, but like the eastern side, which is Calcutta. It has its own colonial past. We were colonized by the British, and amongst others, I must add that. And Calcutta was the colonized capital city back then. So it has rich history to that place. And all the schools, majority of them, they're Catholic schools. So English is given primary importance. It's supposed it's a language of privilege. If you can speak fluent, good English, that means you are educated. That means you are looked up to.
Okay.
So that's the context. Now, when my mom comes from um, a family where everyone uh, she's the youngest amongst all the seven siblings. And she got married the earliest. She was 19 when she got married. She was 20 when she had me. And my parents have a gap of 15 years between them.
Okay.
And my mom was like, I could not finish school. So my daughter was going to study in the best school, like all parents think that if we did not do this, our child will do that. So I was the experimental child because I was the
Okay.
first child in the family. So they did a lot of experiments. So I went to the fanciest school. But then, along with its perks, the challenges I faced as a student was I could never call my friends home because they came, because it was a fancy school, they all had very, very fancy houses too. And I would feel ashamed
Mm,
that if I call them home, they will know my reality
mm,
and
mm.
they will not be my friend anymore. And that's what a child thinks, right? Like they immediately start comparing.
Yeah.
So I never had any friend home till high school come to my place. I just had one friend who knew my lived reality because we shared a similar background. She was a single, her mom was a single mom, and our struggles were very similar, and that's how we bonded. And I
Mhm.
think she was the only friend I had growing up who had actually seen my reality. So I think growing up for me, I lived a dual life, one at home and one at school. So I had to be very careful. I could never form that deep bond, when you have your friend over for a sleepover, or when you go out to a cafe or have a milkshake, or I don't know, do these things that teenagers do. I never did those things because for me there was no money to spend on. So I was like, I always have to sort of restrict myself from forming those deep bonds. So the seniors in my school became my mentors and my friends. I got along really well with them. They were like, "Oh, you're a little kid," they protected me and everything. So that was my schooling for me. And talking about the teachers, I think they were my first teachers, my seniors from school. They taught me a lot of things, um, be it how to dress up, be it about the latest music, be it about the latest trend, the latest book to read. And because I was with them, I was always a cool kid because usually people don't hang out with their seniors, right? So and I did that. So I was like the cool kid, and that's how I think that is my first introduction to looking up to my seniors. At home, this trend in India was picking up where everyone wanted a home tutor. My mother's schooling was because English was still considered a very privileged language to learn. My mom's side of the family could not afford that. So my mother studied in a Hindi school where Hindi was the primary language.
Okay.
And Hindi is the language in India which is widely spoken.
Mhm.
And because of that, she learned Sanskrit as well, because it was a mandatory subject in school. And Sanskrit, well, it's, Indian, it's rooted in the Indian heritage.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think all the languages, if you go back, I think English has its roots in some of the words they have, majority of the words have their roots in Sanskrit as a language. So my
Yeah.
mother knew Sanskrit. And the area that we were in, the eastern side, very few people knew that language. So there was a very high demand of someone who could teach Sanskrit to the kids, because
Mm.
Sanskrit was by that time in metro cities a second and a third language that optionally you could study, and you had to pick a language to study.
Uh-huh.
So my mom had a plus point there, that she was one of those few people who actually learned Sanskrit and could speak and write and read. So that's how she started home tutoring Sanskrit. And the women in our family sort of learned from that, and they're like, okay, we can teach our own local language and dialect, which is rare in this region. And that's how there was a community of trust. I think during our times growing up, there was also the sense of community and neighborhood, that, while walking, you pause on the streets, you meet aunties for us, they would stand in the corner of the street and talk to each other. And they're like, oh, you know what? I've just started teaching. If you know someone, send them over, we'll see. And that is how it would work. Or just standing in the balconies and talking to, your neighbors. So it was more of like a word of mouth. And that's how I saw that community of teachers in my home, that they taught a language that was, in need, in demand. And they were the ones who actually could speak that language.
Mm.
It's sad to see now that that language is dying. No one's teaching that language anymore. But my mom is still till this date, because that was a defense mechanism, right? Because if she was not earning, there was no one to pay that tuition fee, because I had a younger brother too. Um, so it was so embedded in her to save money, and she would walk to all the houses. She would dare not take an Uber or a taxi at that time that was more popular. So she either took a bus, which was more easily convenient and locally available.
Mhm.
And I saw her do that. And till this date, I'm like, I am earning money. Let me send you some money. Like, take a cab. You don't have to walk so much.
Uh-huh.
Till this date, she refuses to do that. She still walks. She's still teaching every day, because that's the only thing she knows at this point, which is sad and nice at the same time, because I saw her be independent. I saw her be resilient. I saw her provide not just for herself, but for the family. But at the same time, I saw that taking a toll on herself. She has never taken a holiday. She has never taken a day to herself. Like, she has never spent money on herself. She's very within that budget. She's healthy as a result of that. She can walk. She's active, which is, touch wood, very, very nice. But these are some things that really bother me. And I think being in that environment is something that has translated in some capacity to me as well. I have not been able to, award myself with things here and there. I'm trying to do that now, but it's difficult for me, because my first instinct by default is to save and
Yeah.
not.
Yes.
So I think those are the kind of teachers I grew up with in my family. I would like to mention one teacher I had, and she was more of a mentor. She was my neighbor. And like I said, language teaching was scarce back then. She was fluent in English. She did her master's in English, and she was the only one in that neighborhood who had a master's degree at that time in English. And
Mm.
my mom sent me to her to read and write, and she has had the biggest influence in my life till this day. I call her my teacher, but she's more than a teacher to me. She's my second mom. My mom would agree. She taught me to read. I read Gone with the Wind. We read all the classics together. We watched all the movies together. And I think she is the reason why I am where I am, because she saw that in me when even my parents failed to see that. They were like, oh, what English? You should go take up commerce or study science, because that's what's going to get you a job. English is not going to get you a job. But she believed in me, and she's like, Snehal, like, believe in your dream, have a vision board, make a bucket list of things you want, because when you write, you manifest. And I must say this, majority of, and I think we'll talk about that when we come to talking about the spirituality section. I would love to
Yes.
do that, because I have manifested, Rasheen, everything after that point. I think manifest, manifest, manifest. You need to imagine yourself in that situation, and you'll get there.
Mm.
That's, I think, the biggest thing that I have learned through all the challenges that I have faced, is that you can manifest yourself into anything that you want.
Mm.
And I think because of these female teachers and leaders is where I am right now. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah.
Let's talk about names. Can we say mom's name and say hello? Can we say dad's name? Can we say your mentor's name and say hello? Because like on this show, we want to literally, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
saying hey, call names. If you want to talk to your brother, say hey. Any of that is welcomed here because redemption comes from somewhere. Your resilience comes from somewhere. So that's why I take all the time, the first part of my podcast, building a strong foundation. And so we can either bungee jump or jump on a trampoline into the next part of what leadership redemption should be doing in the life of the leader today. Because a lot of times it get lost in translation between the way we were raised, then we walk into an institution or a job and we get rattled by the way that system goes. And then now we're here. What do we do now? So this show pays homage to the history, the richness of what makes us who we are. And it starts with those people you talked about. Can you please tell them, hey, and love on them for a minute?
Yeah, I'll take my mom's name and my aunt's name, the teacher who's like, I call her aunt. So in India, this is she's going to school. You'd be so mad at me for saying that. So there's this very colonial mindset that you call your teacher or someone, you respect Miss. So Miss, and then you take their name.
Mhm.
And she used to hate it. She's like, what is it? Snehal, you're not my student anymore. You're an adult. Stop calling me miss. And
Okay.
I can't not do that because right from the first grade, I've always called you miss, because you were
Hmm.
my English teacher like that. Anyway, so yeah, my mom, her name is Sangeeta. So I would love to thank her first for
Oh,
being that resilient figure in my life.
yes.
And Tanjeev auntie, I'll not call her miss. So Tanjeev auntie, she is now moved base. She lives with her daughters in Toronto. So hi to her. And yeah, these are the two very, very important women in my life who have made me and shaped me into who I am today.
Excellent, excellent. Now let's shift gears to the actual work, what I consider redemptive work. Everything you talked about has been redemptive. Redemptive work is simply by the definition that your work carries. So the most people who look up the framework, or I mean, yeah, who look up the word redemption, and I'm coining a term called redemptive leadership, which is fashioned after transformational leadership, adaptive leadership, and all the version of leadership to build this lexicon, this new lexicon of a leader who understands the foundations and are able to bring it up through these pillars, right? And it stands on these pillars. But there's a work that was done from you that constitutes why you are a redemptive leader. It's not because you said it only, and it's not because you manifested it only, right? Because the manifestation is good, but there's work to go in it. Because a lot of people think of the word manifestation is going around a lot as though you sit in a room and just keep your eyes closed for 10 hours and then open your eyes and bam, you have this thing. You have the dream husband, the dream house. And I'm not trying to minimize those who do it that way. But when we talk about redemptive leadership, and if we want to piggyback off the word manifestation, there's work. We're saying that we manifest it through hard work, dedication, honor, ethics, morals, standards and principles that we've held on to for a long time, and we wanted to do shortcuts, but we couldn't and we didn't. We wanted to take the easy route, but we didn't and we couldn't. And we're here as a form of redemption to say that you can do the same thing too. So that's why interviewing you and all my guests, you have done the work. So let's talk about, for one, the name of the organization. I know you talk about Teach for India, but it's important to talk about the name of the organization that you founded when we were discussing it in our MLC in our program. So tell me that name first.
Project Kaleidoscope.
Okay, good. See, that's important because when they
Yeah.
look you up on the internet, which my friend is amazing, you will see all her accolades on the internet. Okay, because so Project Kaleidoscope is that work that she's done. Okay, it opened the door to Harvard, but now she got into Harvard, and that's what I want to talk about now, to paint this picture of what my framework is calling redemption, leadership redemption. It's not a one-time act. It's not a one-time act of a thing that you do and then, oh well, I'll go and eat my favorite dessert now, or I'll just go on off into the sunset now. We keep creating over and over and over and lending our ear, lending our gifts and talents to help others move their agenda forward when someone helped us to do that, when Snehal's mom and her mentor auntie did the same for her. When she got to Harvard, listen to what she was able to do with the organizations that she was a part of.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think just also to again, I would like to give a context of why I did what I did, why I was at Harvard.
Sure.
And I think the whole aspect of giving back to society comes from the fact that I was a girl guide. Yes, a proud girl guide. And I think that's where a lot of my learnings about what community building is, how to give back to the society, and how to have those values of kindness, empathy was embedded in me back in school. And I think that is something I've carried with me even till this day. In my undergrad as well, that was something I have actively advocated for: right to speak, right to make space for people who are not the majority. per se. So I was in the student council in the National Social Scheme Program where we worked for the marginalized voices, and I was the vice president there. So that's how I have held that space. And I was also in the Rotary Club in India, where we worked with the district and we worked to amplify marginalized voices. So I think that was a very big part of my belief into the fact that there are spaces, there are people, there are organizations that want to support you, they're there to support you.
Mhm.
And you just need to find that voice, that helps you build onto that
Mhm.
space. So that's a little background. Now, coming to Harvard, I was very clear that this is something I have to do
Mm.
because, to be honest, back in India, we take a lot of pride in our work, our accomplishments, and there's this level of being humble where you don't talk about your accomplishments that
Right.
often because you are told to be humble about it. You're I don't know, it's a very ingrained practice that you don't brag. Like it's called
Yeah.
bragging. Like what is normal here in the US is actually bragging. So that was a very big culture shock for me that people were so openly marketing themselves. I
Mhm.
could never do that. I was told to, not talk about my accomplishments. And I
Mhm.
think this is one good thing that Howard taught me to is it was a 360-degree reverse cycle for me that no, you need to be loud about what you do and how you do it. And initially, I would refrain myself from calling for myself first gen, low income, because I felt that I was being pushed into certain identities, certain buckets that I was
Yeah.
not comfortable with. So even in my application, I never used these phrases. And it was much later I realized that, oh, I could have actually spoken about these things. This was a part of my identity that I had no idea about. But yeah, so I think when I came here, I realized that there are spaces to voice out your opinion. There are spaces that provide support. So I think I applied in the first gen student affinity group, and immediately I saw that there was space for first generation students, and it clicked immediately about the mission, the vision of that organization to support first gen low income students. And I knew it. When you just know that this is a space that you have to be a part of. At that point, it did not occur to me that I would be leading that space. I just wanted to participate in it because it was
Mm.
a global platform. And not just any global platform, it was a platform supported by one of the best universities in the world. So forget leading that space and having a global voice. I was like, just being a part of this is going to be such a big learning experience for me. So I had applied, and I don't know how. I just got that role, and I was leading that organization space with my co-chair. So yeah, it was a very big learning opportunity for me, and also space to provide voice for first gen students. I think one biggest example I can share is my personal understanding that even the definition of first gen low income was defined in this campus space, and even just here in the US, it is defined to a certain students, and it was very restricted, I felt. And there was very little space for international students
Mm.
to have that voice within the first gen low income community spaces.
Okay.
So I was not just leading that space, I was the first Indian student, first international student ever in the history of the first gen community
Say it again.
lead
Say
that.
it again. Say it again. The first. Go ahead. Let me tell you something. I forgot to warn you.
Rasheen.
I forgot to warn you. That's what I do, honey. That's powerful. Say it again. The first.
Yeah, I was the first Indian, the first international student to ever chair a first gen affinity group in the history of Harvard. And I realized the kind of, power, for the lack of the word, but the kind of voice I had in that space, things that I could change. And majority of our cohort is international. So I
Mhm.
was like, I have a lot of work to do and I do not have a lot of time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think I had my mentors, my peers, my RMLC, you,
Yes.
Alicia,
I
Jade,
sing at the event.
uh, Bianca, all of us to, like support each other. And I think that really helped me to sort of voice out opinion, to create space. I think it's very important to refuse to disappear, even when the world tells you
Woo!
subtly, directly, that you should. but it's the quiet daily decision, that you have to remain visible, to remain valuable, to be a visionary, and to do what you're here to do. And I think having the support of my professors, my mentors, my academic advisors, and my friends
Hmm.
really got me through this space. So, yeah.
Honey, did you hear what my friend said? She said, refuse to disappear.
Yes.
Honey, did you hear that? Like, I get chills when you're talking. You could see me moving even in the screen, or like, I'm like, I feel like I want to jump through the screen so we can be next to each other like we used to be in Gutman. But here we are. Let me bring the audience up to speed here with what is bringing Snehal to the table. Okay, for one, we have the same major, organizational leadership. I mean, educational leadership, organizations, and entrepreneurship. We call that ELOE. So shout out to Karen Batari. Shout out to Dr. Ebony Britwell Mitchell. Shout out
Absolutely.
to Dr. Jennifer Cheatham. And shout out to Dr. Candace Bokala. We love you all. We thank you all for all that you've done for us while we were in the program. Post Harvard, we are reflecting on, just some wonderful gems that, gosh, like when, okay, so I saw Snehal leading leading first gen, but I didn't know this story that she's telling us today. I didn't know that, but I saw her doing that. I knew about um project kaleidoscope, but I didn't know this version of it. Okay, so it's not like we're meeting the work, we're meeting the person behind the work when I bring people to the table of redemption. So let's go back a little bit. Snehal grew up in a part of India where being a female or a woman was to be a challenge, but she rose to the challenge. Snehal then goes on to honor her parents, her mentors, who helped her throughout this entire time to be who she is today. I think that's a redemptive step. Number three, Snehal has an ability to what I call circumvent. That means you went around, you took a circular path around the challenge in order to go up to the next level and overcome this challenge. In my framework, I call that a redemptive arc. You going over that thing to find redemption. See, sometimes you can find redemption straight on, head on. But what if you're not made up like that? What if you're not, that's not in you to just face things like that, right? It is that quality that then allows you to what? Be transformed and go on over it and come around it. But somehow you still gonna win it. You in it to win it. That's my friend that we're talking about. So next she goes on to talk about Teach for India. I want you to understand what the depths of that is when we're trying to look at redemptive leadership. By its nature, Teach for India, Teach for America, Teach for China, Teach for all these places were set up by government entities because they knew that there were holes and potholes in the road to success, that everybody was not going to make it to the top tier, but my friend has. Because one of the things I love about what she's done, just being in community with her, is that it's not enough that she made it to this point. It's not enough. That is not enough for Snehal. That's not enough. It's a part that I have made it to America, or I've made it to Teach for America, I've made it to Project Kaleidoscope, I've made it all these places, but yet I still have my parents, I still have my siblings, I still have those girls, I still have everybody who are still what? At the margins. So her determination blows me away. It blows me away because I'm not void of the knowledge and wisdom of what goes on in other countries. That's another act, that's another skill that I bring to having these dialogues internationally. That the history of what she's talking about, you should look it up, because if you look up what happens to girls versus boys in India when they're born, you're looking at a miracle. You're looking at Snehal, you're looking at Pavani, you're looking at my other guest called Ashwarya, you're looking at miracles. You're looking at miracles when you look at them coming from India, certain parts of the country, certain parts of the world. When she speaks and says, I am a woman, I am a girl, that is saying I have won $1 billion being born here and still being able to be here. So as we go into the work she has done and the work she's still trying to do, right? And still needing support for the journey ahead, we can now talk about how how Snehal, have you found your purpose? Because that's a lot of work you've done. That's a lot of groundbreaking work that you've done. And I love when you pinpointed how your mom, when you put your foot down, so to speak, right? And you said you had the support of your mom, right? And you move forward. How did you find that thing to do that? Because I could be calling that purpose. I could call that resilience. I can call it many things. But from your lens, getting inside of you, what was that? How did you do that? And is that purpose? Like,
Ye- Yes,
okay.
yes. I'm afraid that the answer to this is very simple. I think for me, the only thing that kept me going was there's no going back. There, even like
Hold on,
you,
hold on, hold on, hold on. Say it again.
there is no going back. Like you just have to make it work out. There is only yes and moving ahead. There is no or going back or pausing. That those words don't exist in the dictionary for me.
Ooh, honey.
Literally, quite literally, because even growing up, so I was told to not miss a single day of school because my parents were paying, right? And they were like, you miss one day of school, so they would calculate like this is the amount that we are paying for your classroom for that day that you're not attending. Um, so, in a good way or bad way, I don't know now that I look back that it was extremely stressful for me, but I did not miss a single day of school. I did not miss a single day of my undergrad. I have those full attendance certificates with me. I was the only student who would get that every year. And
Attendance.
everyone would clap, but they did not know the stress that I had, carrying that I am not supposed to miss a single, and that's somehow ingrained in me growing up as an adult, even now, that I cannot miss, a single day. But I think coming here, coming to this Western part of the world, it's made me, treat my body in a more, be more gentle to myself. But
Yes,
it's somehow still ingrained that I'm not supposed to miss work. I'm not supposed to miss a day of school because every day counts. And I think it's so deeply ingrained. And earlier I used to think adults can change too, but now I know that that mindset is so difficult to change.
it is. It is.
It's just so ingrained. I think, and it only comes from the hardship that you
Yes.
go through. It cannot come through any other way. It just has
Yes.
to come through those personal experiences of being rejected again and again, of being in the background again and again. I
Mm.
still remember there was a competition when I was in high school, and all the teachers were like, "Oh, Snehal, you're blocking. Just come this way. You're on the wait list. We'll call you. Let me call the other students first, because." Somehow in the background they knew about where I come from, even though I was
Mm.
in the same classroom. I was always at the back bench. I was not that great at studies. I had average grades throughout, and the students who had better grades were obviously always called for these fancy competitions to go outside, and all this. um, and I think it has come from those failures. I think it is, and I feel that people have people don't like to fail anymore. But I think for me, it is so important to fail and to learn from those failures. And it is impossible to succeed in life without failing at something. And I feel bad for people who have not failed at anything. And I don't mean a big failure where you go bankrupt or something like that, but like even small failures, I think it's so important. And for me, going through that failure every day of my life
Ooh.
from the first grade till I can remember till even now, sometimes I think I fail at some extent. I think it is because of those hardships that I've gone through. And only I know. No one can define it for me. Not my parents, not my siblings, not my partner, not my friends. Only I know the struggle that I have gone through. And it is, I am who I am because of those struggles. I am who I am because of that failure. So
Mm,
when someone comes up and gives me a challenge,
mm,
it feels easy for me to solve because I'm like, wait, I have gone through worse. Like, I have gone through days of not having money. I have gone through days of where I was told to only eat this kind of food for dinner. So I had one kind of food for my entire school from the first grade till the 12th grade. I had the same kind, same ingredient in my for my dinner. Right. So when I get when someone tells me, oh, we don't have this flavor of cake, but we have this flavor, I'm like, I don't mind. I'm okay with it. I don't get mad easily, because I have gone through worse.
yeah.
So when I get something like that, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is fine, and I think that is what keeps me going. That's my purpose. That in spite of all this, if I have survived, there must be something, right, that keeps me going. And it has also come from um, the books and the movies that I have read growing up. My teacher, like I said, the Jivanti, she made us watch very inspirational academic related movies. I don't know if you've seen A Beautiful Mind. It's
Uh-huh.
basically this famous mathematician John Nash, and in spite of his struggles, how he overcame them, and then he was finally awarded a Nobel Prize for his achievements. I've seen Theory of Everything, that is on Professor Stephen Hawking, and I think this that connection of academia and overcoming your struggles has stuck deep with me. And I
Mm,
think that is, I feel a lot of purpose in that space. I feel that I need to give more because I know the struggles that I have gone through. There must be someone somewhere listening to this right now, what we are talking about, and
yeah.
maybe they are being able to relate to this. So
Mm-hmm.
I think my purpose is to have amplified that voice and tell that person who's going through this right now or maybe 10 years down the line that, hey, you're not alone. I hope I'm that voice for them that can tell them that continue doing what you're doing. It is all about timing. If
Yeah.
it's not happening in high school, if it's not working out for you when you're in undergrad, it will work out at some point. You just need to keep showing up for yourself every single day, and it will happen. So yeah,
Yeah.
that.
For one, you started talking about refuse to disappear.
Yeah.
Oh, do you know how many youth that you have helped on the continent when they watch this? There are millions of people who needed to hear that as a way as a level of permission. Refuse to disappear. You talked about when I asked you about purpose, it's like you like excuse me, what did you say? There's no going back. That's what listen, absolutely not. Don't even talk to me about going back because there's going forward. And how about, as I'm really, you know, um being host, facilitator, friend, being all these things in one, trying to contain myself, right? And trying to still stay in this role as whatever. But let's just throw all of that out the window. How about when people see us, they just automatically assume that there was never this story, there was never a trial. When you have a setback, they automatically assume that you can handle it, or looked at you and automatically think you're wealthy enough to handle it. You're wise enough to handle it. And it's like that's when to me resilience kicks in. 'Cause I can have my purpose. I know why I'm born. The average guest is talking about purpose in terms of why they were born, talking about purpose in terms of what you came to earth to actually do. Okay. There are guests that talked about how purpose can be repurposed when we get to this one. And the way I love the way you spoke about purpose, your purpose, is that you discovered it hands down. Hands down, it was embedded and placed in you at an early age through the door of your parents or through the door of the stressors of of perfect attendance and your parents making sure you had the best because they didn't have it, right? We're understanding this, right? We're not saying that the stress that your parents put on you was them trying to stress you out. It was them trying to make sure that when you stood up to put your foot down, it came from them putting the power and the stress in you from the beginning, so that when you stood up, they're like, that's what we paid for, honey. That child right there, that's what we really paid for.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That what we call breakthrough. Because what I describe breakthrough is not the time you hit it once, or not when you hit it the number 50, not when you hit it the 75th time, but whenever it breaks, right? It might break on 100, but that's because it was bammed and you hit it 99 times and it broke through on the 100th time. It's called a breakthrough. From the root of who Snehal is, she is legitimately the version of her mom and dad in extension, just an extension. And that's what she's is wanting to has done with her life. I just want to extend it. Like Pavani said yesterday, she want to add value. Like my other guest saying, redemption is generational. So here we are then. If your purpose is like that, then you may have something more on fire about resilience. Because to me, that what you talked about is resilience. You know, so do you have anything different to add to resilience? Because I got another question I want to ask you. That's a burning question.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'd only like to add here, for me, it is more than just adding value. I think my deepest calling, I believe, at least for now, is to translate between worlds, languages, disciplines, communities. How do we translate those struggles so that others can also understand where we come from? Because I see there's a gap between what we say versus what is perceived oftentimes. So how
Yeah.
do we translate that between different communities, between different languages? Because after coming here, also, just not just with first gen communities, I spoke to so many other international students. Like I said, the definition of the global south was so surprising for me. The food, the culture. I was in Puerto Rico and I was working with the kids there, and they took me to the local space where they eat. And the flavors rushing, it was so, I'm like, wait, this candy is from back home in India. And that is when I realized that, okay, because of tropical nature of this country, of this particular space, this is the kind of spices they use, da da da. I'm like, okay, wait, that is the true definition of the global south. That's why it's called the global south, because of the language, the food,
Yeah.
the sense of community, the
Yeah.
clothes we wear. And I was like, I was able to relate and click to that immediately. I felt at home because of the climate, be it the people. And I think it's that translation, of what resilience can mean, not just in India, but in different parts of the world. And I think that is what the world needs more of,
Yeah.
uh, the translation, if I could.
Yeah. That's really good because if you are trying to work on different continents. It would be different if you literally just stayed in India your entire life. This would never be an issue. You would never have to solve it. But if your level of redemption is trying to redeem the language, redeem the essence of what the struggle was, you're trying to make sure it's not missed. You're trying to make sure, like when mom and dad were saying that, okay, this is we're paying this much for you, this how much we're paying this much for every one day. We need you to get back in there and redeem those days, those monies, right? And so really, to me, when you're talking about that edge to translate, it's like you're positioning and posturing yourself in a way that you're willing to be a buffer. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
really hard job that
yeah,
you're making look easy, because you're telling some people in the United States, and then in India, then in Puerto Rico, then, in Mexico, then you're telling everybody the same thing, but everybody has to have a chance to catch up. And this is why I believe you can be trusted. You could be trusted to do this work that you're doing, because everybody is not as capable in terms of keeping the peace, keeping the love, and keeping the thread going. And that's what I try to sit here And what you're teaching me then is that that's also my job as a podcaster here to easily to work to make it easier to translate the messages. So I will label that, if you don't mind, from here on out, I will try to label the thing that I'm doing when I stop and help bring my audience up to speed, as I'm just trying to translate as well as transfer as well as transform a particular a particular language and a relationship into something that people can grab a hold of, which I am saying is redemptive leadership in that regard. So I
Yeah.
love that when you talked about purpose, you talked about it was discovered from the ground up. There is no going back. And inside of your purpose is levels of resistance and resilience. And then when we go over to the leg of resilience, it is then now to not just add value, or if, even if that is a thing, I'm just speaking that because I know that was other guests said. But for you, the job of the resilient is to be able to translate, making sure that from one country to the next, one caliber of time to the next, one subject to the next, one culture to the next, we keep our history and our purpose intact as we go along. I always say, I always give my guests the last words. One is, what are you leaving this table with, Snehal? Is there anything you've learned from this podcast that you're leaving the table with? Number two, is there something you leaving on the table? Final words, or have you said that? And number three, is there something that you want to say to me as your friend as I continue my quest of developing this framework and developing this new lexicon of leader in this format for this world in time of crises? Anyone or all, you can go, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Firstly, thank you. I think this was a very healing conversation for me. And I was like, oh, we're just going to talk. There are a bunch of, conversations that we're going to have. But I'm like, wow, did I just say that? And when you're picking out on these words and phrases and like repeating it, I'm like, oh, wow, that's
Yes, yes,
oh, I should quote myself often.
yes,
So yeah, thank you for inviting me. I think this has been a very, I'm someone who, goes back and I'm like, huh, I should have said this better. I should have said that better. I could have said this in a better way. But I think the conversation we had right now, I think I wouldn't want to change anything. It
yes.
was so authentic. I've never spoken in, such an authentic and with so much depth and so much of reality in front of anyone before. I think it's been a while. So yeah, this was a nice, checkpoint for me personally as well to sort of pause and reflect on the journey that I have taken and just to congratulate my own self and thank myself that yes, it's, been a journey and what a journey.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so yeah, and something I'd like to sort of, if someone's listening out there and resonates with this, is that uh, I would like to say is curiosity is oftentimes feels that it comes from a place of privilege, especially in educational institutions and elite institutions. And I experienced that for a while, where I felt that, okay, wait, I need to pay my bill. I need to look at what house will I, move to after I graduate. And that sort of stopped me oftentimes to participate in classes. But I think in those moments, reach out. And
Mm,
when I say reach out, I don't just mean in a classroom context. I mean in
mm,
life. If you ever get stuck, reach out. And this is a lesson I learned so much, much, much later in life, that all I had to do was reach out. Back then, when I was not allowed in that picnic, I could have reached out. Back
mm,
then, when I was not doing well in studies, I could have reached out. When I did not get into a college after my undergrad, I could have reached out for help. So it was a lot of trial and error. So here it is, a ready-made response. Reach out. It's a difficult journey. There's no shortcut to hard work, but I
yes.
think at the end of the day, miracles happen, and yeah, miracles do happen. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. And anything you want to say to me as I continue this journey?
I think Rasheen, it's the other way around. I think you are the mentor figure for me right now in this conversation. I think having seen you grow from the conversations and the dialogues we have had back in class in the beginning to what you're doing now, I'm like, where is all this awesome energy coming from? Like, what really like? Because back then we were just in classroom, right? We're discussing and we're submitting assignments, and you don't think that this can translate into a real life project, and to see you do that, actually do that. It's so rare, Rasheen. Trust me. Like I said, people give up on their dreams so easily. And for you to continue doing that right now, in this moment, in this environment, in this space, hats off to you. And I feel privileged to be a part of this, even if it's a small part in your journey. Like, I would love to see you grow and support you in any capacity I can. So please keep doing this. The world needs more of this voice and dialogue. I cannot emphasize more on that. So, yeah,
And
absolutely.
thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. I didn't realize I was more of a mentor to you, and it's an honor, honestly, because it's what I want to do with my life. That's the purpose of doing a podcast versus taking more surveys or attending more conferences and conference calls and stuff. I'm like, I think that I have a very unique way of uncovering what redemption looks like, this particular leader, because I've worked in it, I've done the work, and just to sit down with those people at this level at Harvard, where you have access to people from 62 countries at any given minute, you can just see someone from another country. You can see someone from a different part of the world, and everybody is on a journey to do something spectacular. So why not utilize my first season to do that? As far as when we met, I was coming from a place of so much brokenness after losing legacy, suffering a stroke, going through what they consider incurable conditions and stuff like that. So coming to Harvard this year was my first time back in the public eye after 7 years being away. So being there opened up my heart and open up my mind to the possibility of what it would be like to redeem, return. So that's what leadership redemption is. It is me. So when I say in my video, I came to Harvard to learn how to rebuild a school, I'm actually leaving, learning how to rebuild me. And that's what I'm teaching through my framework. It goes into what you just said. Miracles do happen. And if you find yourself in any particular place, I want to train you to be a redemptive leader. Scale your comeback, baby, because there is a comeback inside of you. And I just want to be a witness to someone that even right now, I might not have all the answers. I might not have all of the looks, or I might have all of the crooks. I might not have the right shape. I don't know what I have, but what I have is a heart to just help anybody I can, and also have a platform that lift up other people who do this work. I could have did a solo podcast and just sat on here and just talked about my work. How boring is that? I mean, how boring and selfish is that? I mean, literally, that was just not even an option. So this has been another um podcast that has, oh my God, has me geeked, has me like literally going to reflect on these different journeys that are inside of each of us, because we, in classes or in our everyday life, we feel like we can only have one thing to say. We have to time it. We don't want to annoy nobody. We don't want to say too much. We don't offend nobody. And we don't want to lose our quote unquote network.
Absolutely.
Come on, somebody. That's what we
Ab-
say in a black church. You better preach. We so afraid to speak because we have cancel culture. We have all the erasures and we have all of that. But I am so delighted that so far the average guest says what you said, Snehal. They feel like they've entered into a level of healing. And that comes from my background in research of autobiographical narrative inquiry. It comes from my background of deep spirituality and knowing the spiritual realm of what it takes to treat people well, and help them treat people well and treat people like they are a well, that you're bringing hope out of a well. You're not just talking to a person or a success story. You're talking to an entity that is literally becoming and evolving in and of itself as we speak. So as I end the podcast, I always say, I sure hope at this table you have been well fed, that you've been fed with hope, joy, love, inspiration, intellectual excellence. And what my guests are saying is not just for Harvard people. It is for people who are from all walks of life, all journeys, all economic statuses, that this wisdom that we gave is for you. We also want to make sure that you have ordered what you want. Ordering means that your goals, your dreams, what Snehal calls manifestations, all these things, that you are putting them in order. Yeah. Yeah, your steps are ordered. You are not just an accident. Your life is not an accident. You were meant to be here for a reason. So when I say ordered what you want, it is literally ordering up your dreams and goals as though you are just the best candidate for something great to happen to and for you. So my final thing is, so what are you going to do to get to my table, this table of redemption? What work are you doing? How are you changing humanity? How are you finding redemption when there was no way? You found a way. How are you bringing somebody along with you as you are making your way to a new round of success that you are trying to dream right now? Right now, we have so many people who are sitting in the back room writing on a little piece of paper. And you are so broken right now. You don't know how you made it through that last breakup. You don't know how you're going to make it through that next diagnosis. This podcast is mainly for you. That I want you to be able to listen to what we're talking about and scale away that by the time I call upon you, you're going to be here. And I'm going to ask you, so what brings you to the table? The table of redemption. And I'm going to look for the best version of you to show up and let the people know that you are worthy, you are amazing, you are kind, you are destined for greatness, and I want you on my show next. Have a great day, and everyone, enjoy your life. Bye-bye. The Table of Redemption podcast disclaimers. Views expressed, branding, and mutual benefit. The Table of Redemption podcast is part of the collaborative refinement phase of the Leadership Redemption Framework before it goes to market. This is a research-based initiative led by myself, Rasheen Jamison-Richardson, your host. Guest participation contributes to scholarly exploration through narrative inquiry and receives platform exposure in return. Rasheen, myself, do not receive financial compensation from guest appearances or their affiliated work. This project is not formally endorsed by Harvard University, Harvard Graduate School of Education, or any institution or any sponsorships at this time. Any reference to anyone's brand, including Harvard's brand, are solely based on my academic experiences as a graduate student and now an alumni, and I do not imply institutional affiliation or approval on any of the content that I am producing. This is all my original work, designed, built, and invented by me across a 20-year experience as an educator and practitioner and researcher. All stories remain the intellectual property of the guest and are shared with mutual respect, transparency, and the shared goal of building bridges of hope and redemption in times of crisis. To continue following the Table of Redemption podcast, you may visit www.tableofredemption.com. You may be able to find our content on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast.